Welcome to the Essay Authors Podcast series with me, Mdu Ntuli, your host and your fellow book lover. Today, I am thrilled and excited to be speaking to Jocelin Kagan on her recent book, Africa's Wild Dogs, a Survival Story. So this book is a large format photographic book that is a spectacular feast for the eyes and is a celebration of one of the continent's most charismatic and endangered predators, the African wild dog. With only about 6,600 wild dogs left in Africa today, wildlife photographer Jocelin Kagan has made it her mission to bring the extraordinary lives of these often misunderstood and maligned animals into the spotlight. And this book has layered the incredible story with emotions many would not associate with this misunderstood and iconic animal. Now restricted to very small populations and threatened by human persecution, diseases, climate change, and natural predation, the conservation of these dogs will be supported by the royalties from the sale of this book. So just to briefly introduce Jocelin before I allow her to introduce herself, in 2002, Kagan accomplished an MBA from the Henley Management Business School. She's an educator, a public speaker, and author of 4 books. She's a passionate advocate for wild dogs and has been tracking and photographing them since 2015. She has also been involved in international campaigns to raise funds for their conservation, and all royalties from the sale of this book will be donated to the African Wild Dog Survival Fund, which Jocelin created in January of this year. That was a mouthful, Jocelin. So welcome, firstly, welcome and well done and congratulations on this spectacular and aesthetically beautiful book. Yes.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes.
And thank you for that fantastic introduction.
Yes, absolutely.
And you have really positioned me to speak about my book, and thank you so much for those compliments. It's been a long time coming and many hours spent lying in the dirt photographing the dogs, but at the same time, wow, what an experience. So yes, I'm really delighted to be here to talk about my experiences with the dogs, to talk a little bit about why I got involved with the dogs and why I'm so passionate about them that I've established Africa's Wild Dog Survival Fund, which is a fundraising platform. And it is a platform to notify the world about this extraordinary animal that has been hunted out almost to extinction, but not hunted as in game hunting, but hunted as in persecution.
Yes, and I fully endorse Mike Gutten's praise of you in the foreword of this book, where he says, Jocelin's tenacity in the field, her discerning eye for remarkable images, together with an array of experts she has invited to add further insight, ensures that in this lovely book, we can now all enjoy better understanding of the lives of one of Africa's great predators. That was a very nice thing to say from him about your book. I just want to, my first question to you is, when did this love of photography begin? And also, when did you start photographing the African wild dogs?
Okay, I first, now here's the secret. I've had a camera since I was 17, 18.
Yes.
But my life took on a very different view. I moved out of Cape Town, went to Johannesburg, set up my business there, which was called Clearhead Communication. And I taught many people to stand up and speak in public, and many people in the business environment. And eventually I thought, I need to move on. And that's when I went and did my Henley MBA long distance with the Henley Business School, Henley Management Business School. And then I decided, you know what? I need to be I'm more creative than being involved in business, although strategically I think like a really good strategist. So I thought, well, okay, let me be strategic about this. And I planned a trip. And this is when theory and practical come adrift. I went off to the Antarctic in 2008. And I went without a camera because I was going to remember everything, which I do, but no camera. So I immediately went back to the Antarctic, which to me is one of the most spectacular places on the planet. And I took a camera, and that's when I really started getting into my photography. And it took me a while to realize that emperor penguins are amazing creatures, but gee, it's really cold down there. And going up into the Arctic to photograph polar bear mums and their cubs in minus 40 degrees and blizzards was hard going. Wasn't there something easier? And that was about 2010. I was in Botswana, and there was this explosion out of the bush, and these animals rushed past, and I was like, who are they? I'd never seen a wild dog before, and I was absolutely taken by them. They were so slim, so quick-footed, so intelligent in their look. They just totally caught my eye and my fascination. And of course, they had a kill, and the way they were gobbling their food, I thought, oh gosh, they're in for indigestion, but apparently not. And I just really fell totally and utterly in love with them. And it took me another couple of years before I actually set out to photograph the dogs. And the cover of the book is that photograph. Just did it for me. I was in Mana pools in Zimbabwe, and we went up very early. We had an inkling where the dogs would be, and we went to a place called Green Pool. And there was this huge pack, about 24 dogs. And we snuck around the pool and got our view of the dogs with the sun coming up behind them. And I mean, I'm talking like 5:30, 5:45 in the morning. And we lay down on the ground, and these pups, which were about 4 months old, started coming closer and closer. And they were really curious as to who we are. And I was just like, crumbs, these are wild animals, but they're coming closer and closer. And this particular pup lay down in front of me, peered into the camera. I shot the image. I thought, that was it. Love at first sight. That was it. And I then set in motion the concept of a book. And at that time, the BBC were filming for their Dynasties series, and one of the episodes was called Painted Wolves. A year later, no, it wasn't, it was 2018, I happened to be in Zimbabwe again, and I was staying at, I popped into Bushlife Safari Camp, and Mike Gunton was there. Now, Mike Gunton is the executive producer of BBC Natural History programs. So I'm sitting at dinner with him, and the reason he was at Bushlife Safari Camp was that he had come with an entourage of reporters from all around the world to launch this particular episode of Painted Wolves, and which has formed part of the 5-part series. And I was sitting talking to him, and I said, well, you know, I've got all these wonderful photographs, and I'm thinking of doing an exhibition of 5 photographs. And by the end of the evening, it was a calendar of 12 photographs. And at the end of the 2 days, it was a book. And that's what you have just been holding in your hand. And so that really set this in motion.
Wow. So is this Jocelin, is this your 4th or 5th book?
It's my 5th book. The others are quasi-academic books, 2 books on public speaking, a book on MBA schools, and a book on how your brain works related to business. So that was a period I went through in about 2000. I was really interested in the brain, and all the new research that was coming out about the brain. So yes, so this is my first photographic book. And I really couldn't have chosen a better subject, just because the dogs are so beautiful to look at.
Yes.
And they are so curious,
Yes.
and just want to know who you are.
Yes. And so, Jocelin, let's delve deeper now into the book itself and the contents. So one of the aspects of the book that I think many readers will enjoy is that the book is not burdened with too much text, but it allows the reader to really bask in the beautiful images of the dogs. However, while the photographs are beautiful, I've always found these dogs very scary, very frightening to look at. And I always thought they seem unpredictable. Are they unpredictable? Are the African wild dogs unpredictable? And have you ever been attacked or feared an attack?
There is no, I would really want to make this very clear. There is no record, either modern day or in history or in mythology throughout Africa, of a wild dog ever attacking a human. There's no record of it. They are not interested in attacking us. They are interested in themselves, in their society, their little pack, their families. They are interested in looking after their pups, growing into maturity. They are interested in playing. They play an enormous amount. They are strategic in their play. They're strategic in their hunting. Are all wild animals unpredictable? I think yes. Am I afraid of them? Absolutely not. I've had wild dogs come as close as to me as to sniff my toes. They have come right up close to peer into the camera lens. So yes, one's always a tiny bit curious, a bit cautious about animals being in the wild, because that's what they are and that's where they need to be, and about them being unpredictable. But I have never, ever felt afraid, and I've been around them so often. So, and all the researchers will tell you that there's no fear on the part of a human being around them. And in the book, towards the end, Nick Murray from Bush Life Conservancy relates stories of his experiences literally within smelling distance of the dogs. And yes, there are all sorts of wonderful stories about the dogs.
Yes, in fact, on page 12 of the book, you write, "Did I feel afraid? Not at all. I felt exhilaration cruising through my veins as having these predators so close to me." And I thought that was very exciting, very exciting. And then my next question, Jocelin, is that why do we often find that in animal families, the females lead the packs? We find the same kind of leadership order in hyenas, in elephants. For example, on page 21, you write, "The alpha female leads the pack, and the pack follows her rules and her command. The alpha female is the strategist and the decision maker. It is she who decides if a new individual or pack will be accepted to join hers." Why is this?
Nature has her way, and nature designs the family in such a way that the alpha female chooses her mate, and she actually determines when she's going to mate, and she determines where her den is going to be. And normally they return to a den that their mothers have used if this is a first time denning, or they will repeatedly return to their den site. The alpha female she's really a character, and you can see her standing out from the rest of the pack. She stays with her alpha male right through, they bond and stay together right through their lives. And woe betide a sub-female who falls pregnant and has a litter of pups. There are stories of the viciousness of the alpha female taking it out on the sub-female who has broken the rules. And to the extent where she will kill the pups, because when an alpha female has pups, the rest of the pack go out, they kill, they bring back food, and they regurgitate food for her to eat. So if a sub-female has broken the rules, she's had pups, the alpha female will very often not allow the other animals, the other members of the pack, to feed the sub-female. And there are a couple of stories where this has been observed by people in the field. And yeah, she can be vicious, but at the same time, she is the one who sets the rules. She decides when to go hunting. Now, that's really interesting. There's an article in the book called Sneeze to Leave. And what was discovered was that when the pack is due to go out on a hunt, they've generally been sleeping. They sleep during the day, and at about 5:30 in the afternoon, the pack starts to wake up. And one member will go and initiate waking up. And they will go and they give a little sneeze. Now, depending on the level of rank in the family, that will determine how quickly the family get up and go and hunt. If it's the alpha female, oh boy, the entire pack's like, hello, they have a wonderful greeting ceremony, and then they go off hunting. If it's a lower level individual in the pack, they go back to sleep and they're not really that interested. So that's a very interesting article in the book.
Wow.
Sneeze to Leave.
And then the males in the pack, so are they allowed? The males.
Oh yes. Oh, they form an integral part of the pack. They are. They all bond together. They all feed the pups. They all nurture the pups. If the main predator of wild dogs is hyena and lion.
Oh, yeah.
If it's a single hyena, the entire adult pack will come together and they will fight off that hyena, off a kill or off their pups. And most of the pups, unfortunately, they lose 50% of a litter to hyena, because when they go hunting, they'll leave the pups with a nanny. But often the nanny can't fend off a hyena because a hyena is that much bigger than a wild dog.
Yes.
And if they're running, the pups can't always keep up with the pack. And so the last one gets picked off by the hyena, and that's usually a pup, which is so sad. So again, this is a very important point that we need to be aware of in conservation, is when the lion and hyena populations increase, the wild dog population decreases. And that's what's happened on the Manipul's floodplain. The packs that I saw in 2015, 2016, even 2017, of packs of 2024, they've diminished down to about 9 dogs in a pack, because there's been a huge increase in the number of lion and hyena on the Manipul's floodplain. And it's a very narrow strip between the Zambezi River and the escarpment. So there's really not much play, an area for the dogs to keep separate from the lions. Whereas in big open territories, and Professor Scott Creel writes about this in the book. There's an article by him. And he's from Montana University, done an enormous amount of work in Africa with wild dogs, and especially with the Zambian Predator Conservation Trust. And he's observed that the wild dogs can actually, when they've got the terrain to move in, they can actually sidle between the lions and get away from the lions. So they do have survival techniques, but not when the land is demarcated by nature.
Wow, I see. So that's an interesting point in terms of the pups. And you said that they lose about 50% of the pups generally. That's interesting. So my next question is exactly, it touches on that. You've been photographing since 2015. And so when you were putting this book together, how long did it take you to merge the emotions of the text with the pictures, with the photographs? And also, do you sometimes feel like a proud mommy or auntie when a family that you've been photographing for a long time has able to successfully raise the pups, the young, to adulthood? Like, for example, on page 30, you touch on the Nyagasanga family. And you say the Nyagasanga family has a lineage, well, Violet from the Nyagasanga family has a lineage of successful alpha females, her mother, Blacktop, and her grandmother, Tate. So can you just tell us a little bit more about this? Do you feel proud?
I do. I feel extremely excited when I go back to Matterpools, because that's one place I've been able to get back to, and I've seen the pups grow up. So they become yearlings, because it'll be a year between visits, and then to see them get any bigger if they've managed to survive. Of course, the sad bit is seeing the diminishing numbers, so that's been very sad. But yes, when I sit with the pups and they are there and they're playing, for me it's a joy. It is such an excitement to have them around me. So when I look at the images, it's so easy to conjure the emotions. And do I feel like a proud mommy? It's like, yes, I do. I love that. So, and how long does it take me to write? I write quite quickly because the emotion is right there. And to me, I wanted this book to be different. I did not want it to be top heavy with description of scientific detail about the dogs. I wanted it to be easy reading. As you said in your introduction, your eloquent introduction about you can imbibe in the photographs, I wanted the photographs to speak for themselves. And that's why I have so many portraits in the book, because portraits to me are a very special aspect of photography. You've got to be really quick, especially with the dogs, because they are like lightning. They change and they move and they're all over the place. So you've got to be really quick when you take your photographs of them. And
yes.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I was just, would you say that the wild dogs are in some way similar to our dogs, our best friend dogs, the domesticated dog?
That's a wonderful question. Thank you. Yes, they are very similar to our dogs. They are wild, and we must never try and domesticate them. That would kill them, because they need to be in the wild. They run for thousands of kilometers. They are enigmatic. They are just dynamic, but play. If you see medium-sized dogs play, they play the same as the wild dogs. In the book, you've got pictures of the wild dogs scratching. You've got them cavorting through water. You've got them finding a twig, playing. Now, you know what your dogs at home are like. As soon as one dog's got a toy, the other one wants it. They're spoiled brats, you know. That's the same in the wild. Yes. But they spoil themselves. And you will see one will find a feather. There's a wonderful photograph in the book of dogs, one dog chasing another with a quill, a feather in its mouth, or a twig. And these are their toys. And as soon as they see one dog with a toy, it's game on. And somebody else will give chase. They'll share a toy and then wait for one to slightly lighten his bite and grab it. So in that way, you are always seeing a dynamic. And that's what I love about these dogs. They're always on the move. I have a passion for elephants, complete passion for elephants. And they, in their own way, have a dynamic of their own. But it's the wild dog that is so dynamic, so full of movement, and that comes out when I write. It's that passion I have for them. It just comes out, and the writing is quite quick. But compiling a book takes a long time. We were about 18 months into production, from start to finish. That was selecting photos. So I took about, 6,000 images, and we had to get that down to 124. It's quite a sifting going on there. And then ordering them and finding the right order to put them in, so that when the reader will be taken through stages of the dog's lives. And then, of course, introducing various scientists into the story. And yes, we are really grateful to Nick Murray for doing his family tree on the Nyakasanga family. And just by the way, when when you read that section and you see the family tree, that came about, that was the nub of the story, the friction between Blacktip and Tate, her daughter, that formed the nub of the story of Dynasties, the BBC program. And subsequently, both of those have died off, and now there's Violet.
Yes.
And Violet's, unfortunately, Violet's mom died. She was killed. And Violet then mated with, because then they were short, the pack was short of an alpha female and it was round to breeding time. She mated with her father. This is the first documented evidence of a wild dog mating with a parent or a sibling. Invariably, they are genetically coded to go and find a mate outside of their pack. So they don't normally mate within their pack. This is really, really unusual. So the questions were asked, well, would they be different? Now, I've bred Cairn Terriers, and I know what happens when you have a problem like that. No, the dogs don't look different, but the genetic pool is weakened. That's the problem. Yeah. So hopefully now Violet is seeking a mate outside of her pack. Unfortunately, her father was killed, and he would have been the alpha male of that pack. He was the alpha male of the pack. He was killed about a month before she gave birth. So, and she wasn't very old. She was about 2 years old, and she gave birth on her own with the pack outside the den, you know, just listening to her yowls and her birth pangs, her emissions. And she ran that pack from inside the den. And those wonderful two, I was so blessed and so lucky to get those two photographs, but also so overwhelmed by the sight of, we'd gone to the den once before and there was nothing. And then the next day, except the dogs came back, they fed Violet, she came out and they fed her. And then they wanted to see the pups. This is the pack. They want to see the next generation. They were just dancing around and they was calling, and you could hear these little yowls coming out over the lip of the den. And she eventually allowed them to come out one by one, and those are the photographs you see, and that wonderful family photograph of the adults standing around and this 1 month-old pup just coming out. The love, the adoration, the sniffing, the licking that the adults gave to this pup was just extraordinary, until Violet decided she'd had enough. She picked the pup up by the head and took it down into the den. So those two are wonderful photographs to look forward to seeing in the book.
Wow. And then Jocelin, you've mentioned something interesting about interbreeding and mating. So how do the different packs find each other? So for example, on page 100, it is mentioned that wild dogs communicate by scent, and Dr. Peter Epps from the Botswana Predator Conservation Trust uses the terms that I found very humorous, and he uses the terms P-mail, bulletin boards, and dating sites, referring to the wild dogs, and the interbreeding communication and mating. So could you tell us, how do different packs find each other to ensure the genetical health of the pack?
I think that is really one of the most important questions to ask about the genetic line. And as a dog breeder, domestic dog breeder, that was something that was really very important, choosing the right mate. Now, obviously in the bush, they've got to do this for themselves, and they cover huge distances. So what Peter Epps and co did was that they set up, Dr. Epps, they set up camera traps. So camera traps take photos as soon as there's a trigger. So as soon as a dog walks past the trap, or an elephant or something triggers a photograph. And what they discovered was that the dogs have a limit to their areas, which they scent mark. And it's usually the alpha pair that do the scent marking. That scent gets visited by other dogs because they want to see who's been in the area. And if they find, for example, that there is a pack of, say, 2 females and 1 male, and another pack of 2, a small pack of 2 males comes past, and they pick up that scent, they will then try and track those 2 females and the male. And then there'll be a greeting ceremony. And this has been observed, where they will get together, they will evaluate for themselves whether this is something that they want to do, whether they want to get together or not. And the closer it gets to mating season, I think the better it is for the partnership to be bonded. And yes, they get together and they create a pack. And they then, and this is something that was observed by Nick Murray and the BBC team, was they observe an election of an alpha male and an alpha female to the pack. And they do this apparently with yowling and dancing and jumping around, and eventually the dogs themselves start to dissipate, leaving one that they have now voted in as the alpha male and one that they've left to vote as the alpha female. So fascinating. There's a lot we don't know about the dogs. There's a lot that we haven't seen about the dogs because they travel so many thousands of kilometers. And because we can't track them all the time. Now, because they're in reserves, we have a greater understanding of them. But there's so much good research coming out. And in that, I refer people to the WAG site, Wild Dog Advisory Group website, because there you can pick up on a lot of the research that has been done on the wild dogs. So yes, Peanuts has got a really interesting way of putting it, female bulletin boards and dating sites. That's how it's done. Wow. And we didn't know this until quite recently. And if I say recently, within the last 5 years.
Yes.
So that's recent in terms of research.
Wow. But you've also touched on something interesting in terms of they elect the alpha female and the alpha male. So I thought it was based on how the strength of the female or the male that makes them alpha, or their will, but it's actually an elected position.
It's an elected position. And this is, I really, personally, if I got involved in any research, I would look at this because I think that's absolutely fascinating. And as I say, it's been observed. It's been filmed. BBC filmed it. And I just find that absolutely extraordinary that in most animal, like for example, in the pride of lions, it's strength. Elephants, it's age. So, and in the wild dog, it's an election. But again, if you look at their social structure, they are electing leaders who are 100% compliant with. And I think, we look at our social structures and I think we've got a lot to learn from the dogs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and then now I want to move on to the next question, which I found quite emotional. And on page 105, you've titled this section, United in Grief. And you say, while we cannot, so I'm quoting from the book, while we cannot know for sure what any other experiences in my times with wild dogs, why we cannot know for sure what any other being experiences in my times with wild dogs, I have witnessed emotions that I recognize and that resonate with me, such as delight, anger, jealousy, and fear. On this occasion, it was grief, including shock, sadness, and resignation. And also on page 19, you say, what strikes me whenever I watch wild dogs is the feeling of security, strength, and warmth in the family unit. Do these dogs feel emotions? Are they conscious of themselves and conscious of one another?
Extremely so. Look, I think the issue of consciousness is a big one. Looking at the family structure and the way they bond and the way they are continually kissing and licking each other and caring for each other, I think that the wild dog has possibly the strongest bond in the animal kingdom as a pack, as a family. And that's where that sense of strength, security, and warmth come into it. What had happened was that we were tracking with the dogs, and this was when I first saw this emotion of grief. We'd been tracking with the dogs. They'd run up to a big pool pond, and we got there a few seconds after what had happened, and the pack was standing on the opposite bank. They were all looking in one direction, and Tennessee, one of the adults, had got there first, and she had been very thirsty, gone to the water and got caught by a crocodile. The pool was infested with crocodiles. Why she wasn't more discerning, who knows? But her paw got caught and, of course, got dragged into the water. The rest of the pack arrived, and they stood on the opposite bank. They were really, really thirsty. It was like 6 o'clock in the evening. They had slept. They hadn't drunk. There'd been lions at the Zambezi, so they couldn't drink there. They come to this pool, and suddenly they were confronted with death. They were confronted with one of their members, their family members, not being with them. They knew the direction she'd been taken in, and suddenly there was this explosion in the middle of the pool, and it was the crocodiles feasting. All I could see out of the corner of my eye was the color and the coat of the dog being ripped apart. I could not photograph it. It just broke my heart. And the dogs stood there. The alpha was sending out a woo, woo call, which is what they do when they are anxious, when they are trying to find a member of their pack that's gone missing during a hunt, for example. And the puppies were desperate to drink, and you could see them tentatively going to the water's edge and just literally lapping up the mud, but focusing in the direction of where Tennessee had been taken and where this explosion had happened of crocodiles. And then we saw coming down the pool, it was a rather large pool, an armada of crocodiles. And I was standing on the bank, and these dogs were still standing there. And I thought, no, if they don't move, I'm going to go down there and move them. I was just like ready to run down this embankment and go and scatter the dogs.
Yeah. But
fortunately, at that point, one of them realized that Tennessee was not coming back, and he turned, and the pack followed. And they reorganized themselves. They came up to the road. The jubilation that they'd had when they were running up to the water has gone, and you could just see them. And there's this amazing photograph I have in the book of them walking, heads bent, tails down, which we know from our domestic dogs. When they're unhappy, that's what they do. They drop their tails, they drop their heads. And this entire pack walked in single file past the beautiful trees of manor pools. That's exactly the photograph, yes. And they were just all really, really sad and bereft. So do dogs have emotions? We know they have emotions. Do dogs mourn? Of course they do. We know that if we've got 2 or 3 dogs and one dog dies, we know that the others mourn them. They stop eating, their behavior changes. In the wild, it happens a little quicker. We knew that the dogs hunted the next morning, so they got over it. But that particular pack, then they had lost a pup, they had lost an adult, and that particular pack then left the area. And there we have it. And they left the area and they went to their own homeland.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so sad. Even looking at the photograph, when people look at the photograph in real life, you can feel the emotion that the dogs are feeling at that moment, that they are sad, they are mourning something.
Correct.
And before I ask you my last question, Jocelin, do you think there'll ever be a time where we domesticate these dogs? I mean, lions in some areas have been domesticated, tigers have been domesticated. Do you foresee some person thinking, I might just take this one?
I hope not. I hope never to see that. I'm totally opposed to human contact with wild animals, such as in petting zoos and petting wild animals. I do not think it's a thrill for the animal at all. might be a thrill for us, but there have just been too many incidences. But apart from that, I think it's wrong. Wild animals belong in the wild. I know in Australia, the dingo is not an original wild dog. It was an imported dog from Indonesia. It then went feral. Whereas the African wild dog, its genesis is Africa. It's a wild animal. And I hope that it never, ever, ever becomes domesticated. And anybody who's thinking about it, I think that's wrong. The fact that there are more tigers in homes in the world and in private zoos, I think it's just awful, than there are in the wild. I think that's wrong. I speak out against it very, very strongly. And I will do absolutely whatever it needs to be done to assist those who are working in conservation, who are growing the wild dog packs, who are looking after them in reserves, who track them every day to make sure that they're okay, to make sure their pups are okay, to grow the numbers. I will do whatever I can. And I hope that I'll be supported by all of you watching this, by your contributions to Africa's Wild Dog Survival Fund, and of course your thorough enjoyment of Africa's Wild Dogs, a survival story, which I hope you'll all hold in your hands pretty soon. And thanks to Random House, Penguin Random House South Africa, for being the distributors for Africa and for putting this book out to as many places as is possible in Africa, throughout Africa. So thank you very much. It's published by Merlin Unwin in the UK, and it's distributed by Penguin Random House
South Africa. And then my last question, because we do have to close, is there's a quote in the book at the very end of the book by A.A. Milner, who says, "Some people talk to animals, not many listen, though. That's the problem." And so, Jocelin, what do you hope people will feel as they flip through the pages of this book and read the stories in this book? And how, so what do you hope, because I like feelings, what do you hope people can feel? And also lastly, how can they follow you and support what you do?
What I would love them to feel something of what I felt. It's a good news story. And I think in this time of COVID-19, we need good news stories. It's an uplifting story. It's a story of going forward. It's a story of growing the wild dog numbers. It's a story of intrigue, because what do they do when they're not around, when you don't see them? And so, yes, I want people to feel that inspiration. I want them to feel what I felt when I'm out there with the dogs. I want them to feel the excitement of the dogs, the passion of the dogs, their sadness, their curiosity. And I want them to feel something of what I experienced when I was out there photographing. And how people can follow me. They can follow me on Facebook. We're getting all the social media stories sorted out, but I'm on Facebook. Africa's Wild Dog Survival Fund is on Facebook. It's on Instagram. It's on Twitter. So on social media. Yep, follow me there. On LinkedIn, we're there. Follow us. Keep up with the stories. Keep up with the reviews of the book. And of course, there's Endangered Wildlife Trust. We're doing a webinar on the 21st of October at 7 in the evening. And that's going to be an exciting event. That's the official launch of the book. So yes, there's a lot happening around wild dogs, and they are the flavor of the year. And just come and be part of the party. Yeah. Come and celebrate with the wild dogs.
So how can people get hold of African Wild Dog Survival Fund? Is there a website? Is there a link?
There is. My Jocelin Kagan photography website will be up by the end, within a week. And in there's a page where people can contribute. Yes, and can make donations.
Yes, and I'm sure a lot of people would love to be part of the webinar that you'll be hosting about the African Wild Dog Survival Fund. Can people participate in that webinar? Should they go to your website?
Yes, I'll be posting it on my Facebook page, and I'll be posting it on most probably on Instagram and on Twitter, and on the Endangered Wildlife Trust, EWT, on their website. It will be on that. So yes, come and join us. Come and have a chat with us.
Yes.
Dr. Harriet Davis Mostert, she's going to be chatting with me, just the way you have been chatting with me. We're going to have a fun evening. Like, I've had so much fun with you now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was so much fun. And thank you for agreeing to speak with me about this book. When I read it, as I was flipping through the pages, it really made me, it changed my feeling about African wild dogs. It gave me an emotional appreciation for them. And also I've learned a lot about them. I didn't know. I mean, I love dogs. I'm a dog person. So I really discovered an affection for this dog. And also it's very iconic for Africa.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
And you have said it better than I could ever have said it. What is the aim of this book? You have just said it. If it changed your mind, that's what I'm after. And I hoped you'd say it, and you did. And thank you. I really appreciate that enormously. Thank you.
Africa's Wild Dogs, a survival story by Jocelin Kagan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.